17 plus years in the making of this film. And I would love for you, having everyone experienced it, talk about what your motivation was to do it.
And when Katrina happened, he said to me, I think, let's go down there and just look around. And we flew down. He had a little home camera. This is 2006. And we went down, and he said, great. We came back. He said, you know, we got to kind of follow up on this. And we decided we'd go down for a year, 4 times a year each season for 2006, and then he'd have a little film that he could make. But then we became friends with these people, especially the Harrisons. And we said, well, we'll just keep coming back until they get back in their homes. And that'll be quick. So we went 4 times a year for 6 years down to New Orleans, filming this. And then we made a couple of other films. One is called New Home Movies from the Lower Ninth Ward, which kind of collects all the people we got to meet. And one is called I'm Carolyn Parker, which is about one woman in particular getting back in her home. And about 2015, oh, I should say in between here, because I've said this story before, that as we flew back, shall we say the 3rd time, I said, Jonathan, are you going to get a film out of this? He said, yeah, I think so. I'm a little worried about the footage. And I said, how come? He said, I've never done this before. I said, what do you mean you've never done this before? He said, I've never shot a film before. And he was doing all the shooting at the beginning. So that worried me a little. And then in about 2015, we were talking about how this was the next movie, the Harrisons. And Jonathan died in 2017. Right. So 2 years after that, his son Brooklyn and I and some other people went down to update the footage. And then luckily we had COVID. So I had lots of time at home with my wife, who was a wonderful...
Luckily.
Yeah, right.
Interesting choice of words.
Well, you know how things happen,
right?
Marriages happen,
right.
And editing projects happen.
So we finished it up. And it's been touring around, and I'm delighted. We had a screening this last week with the Harrisons talking still. I'm sorry they can't be here because they're the real experts on this, as you can tell. But you asked why we did it, because I think their story is so important. And we wanted to finish it. I wanted to finish it for them and for John.
You call the Harrisons and the folks that are doing this work cultural warriors. And you know, one of the things that we really do here at ROXFILM is to, and I talk about this all the time, everybody's sick and tired of hearing about it, is really is uplifting these stories, right? Because I didn't know, you know, all about this, and that's one of the things I think with Katrina that happened. We understood what was happening to the Black population and losing their homes, not being able to get back in their homes, but not even thinking about what the culture was beyond that there was this Indian culture on that. So can you just talk a little bit about this aspect of cultural warriors and why that was important to both of you, to make sure that we all understand that?
Sure. I mean, you know, the Harrisons, they say in this film, what, there are 500 people who are doing this now, right. I think is their number, something like that. I think, a very important tradition. I think it's an important tradition. If Katrina had never happened, they would fight in the fight to make sure that this continues. Katrina made it more
Not only continue, conversation about how Mardi Gras commodifies it, and it's, you know, it's obviously important to them that their tradition that they maintain, and it's not presented as some exotic party for visitors.
Right. You know, I learn something every time I see this film. And the last time I looked at it, it occurred to me that we talk a lot about speaking truth to power. It's something that people do. In a real way, I think the Harrisons are saying, power, just go away so we can do what we want to do. Just stop interfering. And it's about self-emancipation. It's about a chance to fulfill what you really want to do. And they've not only done it for themselves, but for now 2 or 3 generations of kids who they've helped understand this process. I mean, as soon as I saw the scene in the school where they all play and sing and read the book, I went, well, yeah, they're passing it on. And they were going to pass it on, Katrina or not.
I mean, there's so many people like them in throughout the country, throughout the world, especially in the Native community, and here too, is trying to keep that tradition going forward and trying to reclaim so much of what was taken from people. I think it's interesting, the process that you went through to create this film. It's very cinema verite. It's very, it's sort of like chopped up in a bit, because you shot it 17 years ago. You went back and kept shooting. So what was that editing process like to sort of like, then you have to put it together?
There's also great archival footage that we have, the Harrisons, and the patriarch was dead, but there's that gorgeous footage of him in the streets and at home, and so there was also archival footage. It was a job, and I only had met Maurice. I didn't know the family at all, and it was COVID, so I wasn't going to be meeting them. But it was an amazing introduction to dig into very disorganized footage because nobody had read. It was very disorganized footage, and it took a long time, and it took a lot of back and forth.
We're still married.
But it was an honor. It was an honor to get to know these people and to learn as much as I could about the tradition, not from them directly, but from the footage itself. And part of what I loved about the project was that I'm trained as a dancer and a choreographer, and I usually edit stuff that has a lot of movement in it. And there was great, if rocky, footage of people moving, dancing at the party, dancing in the streets. The Harrisons themselves, I love, they often do something like this. And, so the physicality was a treat. To not just have people yakking.
I'd love to hear any questions from this audience.
Absolutely.
We have time to do that. You're going to be shy with me now? Don't be shy.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
We answered everything. Oh.
I have a question. Sometimes documentary films can feel like you can feel the director, you can feel like a strong point of view, and this felt very organic. And I'm wondering what that process was like, because the cinema verite feel of it, but also just it felt like we were talking or listening to them, not that they were being interviewed. And I'm curious about that process.
Yeah, there are a couple of things about that. One is that we really became friends with the Harrison, and they were willing to share stuff. They still kind of say, I can't believe we let you film that. So there's some of that. The other thing was that I think we made a kind of mutual decision that there would not be a narrator or a director's perspective or any of that. We wanted them to say their truth rather than it coming through us. If you see the film that Jonathan made before this called I'm Carolyn Parker, he narrates it. He talks about meeting Carolyn and what it was like there. And I felt like it was important to have the Harrisons, who are incredibly verbal, right, about all of this, to just say their piece. And so we spent hours and hours getting out of the way and making sure that it was their voices.
Yeah, it's all you appreciate, because I think there is a style of documentary now, and we're white, and our subjects are black, but there's a style of documentary now where it's about my approach to this, and,
Yeah, I think that's important because it is sort of getting out of the way. It almost felt like you gave them the camera and let them tell their story, and you did sort of get out of the way and you just put it together. It reminds me very much of African cinema, which is just sort of this like oftentimes, I don't know if you've seen Charles Burnett's film in Namibia and the other film Bamako, where the camera's just on and you're just like in someone's living room, and then you're walking down the path, and then you're meeting a cow, and then you're, it's just this beautiful feeling of being in that space, right? And that's what this feels like, because it's not that perfect, documentary. Where's the lights? Get the person, let them sit down and talk. And I think that helps you come into their lives a lot more.
And there's nobody from outside their family, in fact, who says, and in order to actually verify that what they're saying is true, I'm an expert.
I'm a photographer.
Yeah, I mean, I get questions a lot about what lens I'm seeing this through. And I didn't want Arlene's to be any part of this, if we could get away from it, if that was possible. I wanted them to talk.
So, thanks,
When did the actual filming stop? Like, I'm curious about the span of time of the filming.
We went through 2012, Jonathan and I.
Okay.
Then I got frustrated because we had only made one movie, and I knew there were 6 to be made. So I wrote a book called Fight for Home, which is about all these people we met. And then we went back in 2019 and filmed for, I guess, a week there. And that's when filming stopped.
Okay.
Although we could film right now, and the Harrisons would be fascinating, and there's more story, as you could tell kind of by the after stories about it.
So the museum had been built by 2019?
In 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So she raised $1 million?
No, she didn't raise $1 million, but she figured out how to do it. She raised quite a lot. Her complaint, when she said, I have a footprint at the end, that was her kind of making fun of herself. She wanted a big museum, and she got a little museum. I think the $1 million was the big museum. But as she said, I got something, I made it different.
Did you show the movie, the film in the community?
We're going next Friday
Oh.
to New Orleans.
Yeah, the film.
And those little kids are gonna be like,
I know.
Yeah, the kids are coming, so they won't be kids anymore.
I know, I know.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. Looking forward.
Any other questions, thoughts?
Is the film accessible to be shown in settings?
Classroom settings.
We do have a distributor called Good Docs, which charges, if you work at school, probably the school can pay what's necessary. If not, for some reason, find us.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not publicly available, but for schools, it is.
Schools and museums and
Yes.
sort of public institutions. We'd love it to show at any of those, and we'll come and talk.
Harder to get the Harrisons, but, to fly.
I have one other question, and that is, when you're shooting this kind of documentary, when do you know to stop?
Oh, we didn't notice that.
Yeah, but I mean, even now, even going back, you're gonna be like, oh, we should capture that footage. How do you know when the doc is over? Because this is a living, breathing thing.
I'm trying to think. 2 of the 3 grandkids are filmmakers, right? So I think the next part of it is them, if they want to do it.
And Brian Big Chief has made one called Keeper of the Flame.
Oh, we did screen.
Oh, you did good.
Yeah, so I think, as I said, the marriage lasted, and we want that to stay. So I think we won't go back and
No more editing projects like that.
But, I was thinking as we drove up here that we have lots of footage that should be in the Harrisons' hands for their future use. And that would be too much of a burden, actually. But we also have some scenes that didn't make it in that I'm sure they should have. But Harist was honored, believe it or not, by the FBI. And there's a great scene where each of the children, the grown children at the Sankofa Saturday meeting talk about what they remember about the chief in the family. And those are great memories that I'm sure they've said before, but they maybe haven't said them on screen.
Right.
So I was thinking,
But that you
that's one
capture
way
them
that
is
this will
something,
continue
yes,
is
that
to
you can
return
take
them.
and make it for the museum.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you
Screen this.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you all.